How can the same idea always be new? Really, this is probably bringing out the way early wasn't have double woe dig piece of doing, even though mud slap inflicting. Pursuit into focus part of the reason used to having energy drained instead of holy heck doing this too long. Man, it's really melted through and through, less like sun and moon, and more like two blazing suns answering the question for something that wait, please walk with us, with style, flair and stunning sophistication. The dumber case first. You have an idea and then you forget it, but then you get it again, and it's new. But no, because it was remembered, it might feel new, but that's the same as being shown something, and then thinking of it later at some point. The first time you get an idea, that new thing is being shown. After that, it's seeing that thing again and serving it onto the table as something refreshing, because it's been a while since that slap hit. Like if for example you have a choices thing, and all choices are similar to close to almost random, and you do them, and then you do them again later enough, that nothing can actively be remembered by pulling a locker of sorts, but things still match up. That type of cutlery. But further, the stump has a card folding up, because if the second and third and fourth and so no time match up to the first time, it's only reasonable to interrogate the first time for a little bit and see how that origin story had the origami folded, since there's not yet proof of it being the first to conclude how a leaf would be towing wind. I could be, but are you not bothered to go walk the path less traveled by? Oh yes you are. So without waiting to look down for a fundamental interaction which causes mutual attraction between all things that have mass to start affecting you, in the sense that the adjacent mass is larger to the point of retrospective negligence, let's duct tape ominously, that ideas come from somewhere, and use touching as a proprietary means of shifting location by infiltration, until the executive decision is made to work up a display of an accident from which to leave the adrift back into some proportion of what's been leaked in. He has an idea, she has an idea, we all have an idea, and sometimes it's the same, but at some place it was earlier, so somewhere else was the repetition, walking all over repetition bridge, and not including that in the description of seeing how big the ice is from below. That's just the thing. The ice thing from below is just a board that means you can't see even in an imaginary way. But there was no conical in between to spread the idea around artificially. Unless the entire thing nested in an artificial blanket that's warm enough but no to wall, such that nothing would ever leave unless insanely penetrating as an exception of yeah realization after realization, going through sweat and stepping forward over new and all of that. What a rush. Anyway, the institutionalized classification is based on who reports the rest first to be registered in some sort of who cares and reveal and yada yada. But seeking what's behind the curtain doesn't have such an unbased jurisdiction, but bases on what no shortcut flank could be seen around shaping tubular to get on the cutting edge of sweat to seeing what behind out of concentration. It seems that concentration leads, while everything else dilutes lead and but the scissors short of paper, leaving them unrendered and waiting, which is the worst. Whether or not the idea is first on, he or she doesn't pull out the wooden cuboid of what would catalyze an idea to touch somewhere. And it doesn't matter if it's perceived as anything that's neatly polished or fits into something. That's including if it gets immediately slapped off of just bending over spoons instead, like earlier. So the deeper case is, can you really think of anything yourself, or are the ideas going around touching materialization to see what happens? Or execute some other plans to hopefully not end up as an electrically or occasionally otherwise blown up basket balloon? And where exactly? Touches have to come from somewhere if they aren't already there. At least that's the current way of going up rail and steps. So one suspicious approach would separate the two, meaning that you got the marble place where ideas go touching around, and then their place where either here might be going to touch around, or is blocked off. The grip of which indicates a triangle type situation for the two, because one side would pull the attractive center and therefore control where cuboids fall down regardless of what the other mass of substance does, since the attractive centra doesn't reach into its spot. And now we got the two places, the marble of which makes up whirl as we slap it, and the ideas of which reach into it to sometimes touch around. But since better ideas are coming in as time passes into mass, and the milk exchanges go by from doing it up the hall and calling it, the ideas place could have more solid ides from which to pass by. For all P know, it might be that jumping around here and smashing stick over whatever gathering does on interaction might generate some slaps passed into that realm, maybe interchangeably. That would be side of passing through tubes that allow but we can't find. But more fun clap sight is that the ideas spot has better ideas than here, since the former case would probably need better ideas for the tubes to show up and make tubulars switch touches. Either path you take, there's some spot of claps being more. That would be an outer layer, and it's the outer layer that decides what to let be leaked in, and the base is what happens within Marble, as a judgment on further leaks, as well as other forms of selection, possibly to find the even more outer layer that's suspected the way this is suspecting. To see what happens. That hints at a layer. What's interesting about these kinds of experiments is that the convergence of which question is available to look at seems at points quite straightforward and tickles in the right way to get excited. But for some reason we ignore to evoke effort, as if it's a tease of the ideas that don't want to be touched in return, not assuming it's the most profitable trajectory in terms of yielded correction, but contributing in some sort of direction that also could steer into the waves of what the boards are hiding from what doesn't. The screen itself is like smoking honey, while breathing to recover shoots sense into what a sense to do would make it. That's relatable enough to the individual not in a race with himself to see what the layers have to have sought to step over into that layer and traverse back as far as possible to seek the next step of everything. Everything has a next step that pulls the entire reel of net regardless, because a layer moves in unison with itself.